Hello everyone and welcome back to the Garibaldi Red podcast, a Nottingham Forest podcast. I'm Max Sayes, your host, and today something slightly different as we're still in pre-season, although the season is fast approaching more than ever. And today, delighted to welcome to the podcast Paul McGregor, former striker for Nottingham Forest. Paul, good to see you. Hope you're well. And I've got to say, mate, you look 10 times better than me at the weekend playing in the Footprints charity game at Baseford. What have you been up to? Because you still play football quite a bit, don't you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. Lovely to see you too. And again, you look slightly better than when you were giving away the penalty in the last minute.
Yeah, that was an interesting moment.
2 minutes before you gave away the penalty in the dying seconds, you did a really good tackle, and Jason Lee was applauding you, and you turned around and gave a big thumbs up and a big wave, all really showy. And then within a minute and a half, you've scythed somebody down.
There you go. That's why I'm not a footballer. Stick to podcasting and all of that.
It did make me giggle.
Yeah, it was a good day on Sunday, raising money. I mean, do you do many of those charity games? Or
I do whenever I'm asked. If I'm available and I'm fit, then I'll do them. I've got to an age now where I'm still fairly fit. I enjoy. I used to despise running. I used to hate running when I was a player. Pre-seasons and all that kind of stuff. I used to hate it, but now I love it. I just love getting earphones on, putting Spotify. I know that's a dirty word for musicians, but putting Spotify on and just going. And I really enjoy doing around 15k as regularly as I can. Just it takes about an hour, so that's just lovely. It's more, you know what? It's more meditative than anything else. But the one thing I miss about being a player, and it's a bizarre thing to miss, like the feeling of lying in bed and your body's absolutely killing you, and you've had a knock, and like how a bruise feels, and putting ice on, and the self-maintenance really, and feeling like you've been in a battle, and you're feeling like you've been in a bit of a war. I miss that. That's what I miss more than anything. So getting to play in these charity events when asked, it just feels nowadays that it's a privilege to cross the white line at any given moment now, because you're a long time dead, and that moment comes quickly for lots. There's lots of lads younger than me that can't play anymore, that their Achilles are too tight or whatever. So yeah, I don't kill myself with it, but I've signed for Sandaker Town Vets, which was nice, because they were my first ever club, Sunday club. So Clifton Allwhites and Sandaker Town were my first clubs. So I re-signed for Sandaker Town Vets, and we're not brilliant, but I enjoy the getting out and having 80 minutes. It's lovely.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I suppose as a footballer, I often think this when players retire, how difficult it is going from, playing just such high intensity games to then all of a sudden stopping, and not stopping fitness completely, but almost having, all the drive for football and everything like that. And then it just all coming to an end. I mean, how did you find it when you finally announced retirement and went into, because you do lots, you keep yourself busy with the band, and you've just started coaching, which we'll get on to, I'm sure, in a short while, but was it difficult almost adapting from going from playing professional football and almost putting your body in extreme conditions at times to then all of a sudden kind of stopping in a way?
Well, I went from one extreme to another. I switched drugs, essentially. So lots of lads struggled with it, because you fall off. You hear about, it's a cliche, you fall off the cliff when you stop playing. And you do. Like, lots of people stop talking to you, or not stop talking to you, but don't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And you've not got as much in common and all that kind of stuff. All that sort of stuff comes years later, when you all realise that you actually all do like each other, or you don't like each other, or whatever. But I retired because I was having such a bad time at Northampton. I despised the club and despised how I was being treated. I was being treated horrifically there. Not really time to go into it, but yeah. So I was ready. I was done with the game. If a club had come in that kind of put an arm around me and really wanted me, I got offered got offered to go to Grimsby and I got offered to go to Hull, but like, just the idea at 28 of going to live in Grimsby or Hull, I just didn't have it. I was just like, no, mate, I'm not doing it. And who knows, could have got back to the Premier League or whatever, but I was 28 and I'm looking at it and I'm going, I go to Grimsby for 2 years, or, I just couldn't see a future, an enjoyable future. So, the band was doing well. We were playing like really uber cool gigs in London, like warehouses in Shoreditch on skate ramps, and be 400 kids going mental. And we were getting like Bobby Gillespie was coming to our shows, and Kate Moss was coming, and Jay Jagger, and it was like this really cool scene was happening, and we were one of the kings of it. And the week I retired from football, I sat my dad down and told him that I think I'm done. I can't go and do it again. The band was named on the front page of the NME as this kind of new dark wave of London that was happening. So front cover event, retire from football, front cover of NME, and then I was off again, another decade doing a different, having a second youth.
Do you know when you announce your retirement as a player, is it just, this is me talking from a fan's point of view, is it literally just you going, that's me finished? You let the club know if you're at one, but if you're not, you're finished, and that's it? Or is there any other process where you have to go? Because obviously, like the PFA are involved quite heavily now in some retirements and things like that. I mean, when you retired, was it literally you went, I'm done, I'm finished, and that's me onto the band full time and onto retirement?
Yeah, I mean, there's no official process that I know of. I'm guessing if you're Lionel Messi and you announce your retirement, it's a big deal. If you're Paul McGregor and you're at Northampton Town, I told my dad, and I just didn't go back into football. That was it. There was no official, I'm retired. So I guess I'm still open for employment.
If anyone's listening or watching, I'm sure they'll have you. I'm sure they'll have you more than me, mate. Especially after the weekend. Let's go back to your Forest time, really, and how that started. I mean, how did Forest approach you? You played under Clough as well, the latter stages of when he was at Forest, and kind of how the Forest connection really started for you.
Well, I was a little bit of a late bloomer. It was really cliquey when I was coming through all the ranks of grassroots youth football. There was a team called Pheasant Colts that had everybody. Matty Carbon was there, John O'Kane, who went to Man United, and Stevie Robbo, Neil Glasser. All these players went on to play for Birmingham and Forest, and whether they all signed professional contracts that side, bar one or two, I think. So there were this superstar grassroots team. And they were winning everything. I didn't want to join them because I was playing in another team called they were called South Notts, not to be confused with the representative side. And I really didn't want to let that team down, but I was sick to death of being a really good side and then getting to playing Pheasants and getting walloped like 7-1 in a cup final. It was winding me up. So my dad was always saying to me, you should be playing the highest standard you possibly can, which was great advice. So I moved to Pheasants, and then we won everything and scored, I don't know, 150 odd goals that season. It was crazy. And then did the whole, representative, playing for South Notts, playing for Nottinghamshire boys and all that kind of stuff. And all the lads were going to trials all over the place from Pheasants. They were going to Man United, they were going to Everton often, Tottenham, they were, Sheffield Wednesday were big, and were getting hold of everyone at the time. And I only went to Sheffield Wednesday once, and then I started getting a few sniffs, a few people calling my dad. But when I really came, like around the age of 14, I was playing for Forest Boys, which was a grassroots team, but it was loosely associated with Nottingham Forest, very loosely. And I've told this story before, but we were playing Gresham, which was our home site, which was our home ground where the academy is now, and it was a drizzly day. I remember a grey, drizzly day, and we were just traipsing off the field. There used to be a little car park near the entrance, a gravel thing. And there was a there was a few scouts knocking about and cars, and I think I'd scored 2 or 3 goals, which was fairly common back then. And coming off, and my dad was going, "Oh, I think there's a few people going to come and talk to me today." And then, literally out the mist, this mythical creature, this mythical kind of vision of Brian Clough and Alan Hill came out the mist in their big, long blue Umbro coats. And, there's a sheet of paper. You're signing for Brian Clough today, son. Illy, give me your pen. Illy, give me your pen. So Illy had to give him a pen, and I'd signed in the wet on the back of a blue Cortina. So I signed schoolboy forms on the back of that blue Cortina there and then. And you could see like the Tottenham scout and the Everton scout and the Sheffield Wednesday scout were fuming because they were sat waiting because they'd been speaking. So they all wanted to speak to me. But Clough just walks in, sign that, lad, and that was done.
Yeah.
My dad just looked, I looked at my dad and was like, do I sign it? What did my dad's like? I don't know. I've not done this before. So there was it. Signed my life away to Nottingham Forest on the back of a blue Cortina at Gresham Car Park. And that's how I signed for Forest.
What a story. When you think about somebody like Clough, and obviously I wasn't around to see him, but family members and my dad always, talks about him and just his persona and his character. And he really just didn't say, almost take no for an answer. And not that he just did what he wanted, but he kind of did. And obviously that story about him literally just approaching you and almost forcing you to sign and in the cold, wet day, mental. I mean, what were some other stories about Brian Clough? Some standout ones from your time at Forest? Because I can remember listening to you on, you've done the Garibaldi Red previously, but a few others, and there's some good stories in there.
Yeah, I mean, well, I did Reservoir Red Dogs with 40 for a long time, didn't I? And all the stories are out there. I've mentioned this before as well, but I've actually written a script about my 2 years as a YTS player, because it was the 2 years that his empire was kind of crumbling, and the last, like the script kind of ends with that last day where they go down and there's 5,000 Forest fans chanting his name on the pitch, because he does that amazing interview, doesn't he? I forget who he's with, where he says that the fella goes, well, thank you. What does he says? He says, I just want to thank you for your service, or something like that, Mr. Clough. And he has this real guttural kind of, and he's holding back all these tears, and he's, thank you, son. Well, there was 4 people in that room. It was the old weights room. It was the cameraman, the guy doing the interview, Brian Clough, and me just off screen. Because I was shadowing him that day just to make sure he was all right. A few of us were from the youth team. So I've written this mad little script, and there are stories and stories all over the place. But it's more the day. The thing that I find mad, rather than an individual story, is the day to day of you leaving school and that man being your manager, and the atmosphere that was there, that was in and around, of this sort of genuine genius and godlike figure, this mad patriarch just walking around, and you never knew when he was in or when he wasn't. You'd only ever hear the dog rattling down the corridor, and normally followed by Blondie, and that would mean me having to go and fix him his drink or his bath or whatever he needed, more often than not with his squash racket and whacking everyone as he goes past. But yeah, I mean, finding yourself like sort of 2 months into a new job at Nottingham Forest, having taken your GCSEs 2 months previous, and scoring a hat-trick at the weekend, or scoring a couple of goals at the weekend, and then getting your morning is you're being told that, like, listen, John, Blondie's having a bath with me today. He's not coming training. And John Perkins fuming because he wanted me training, and then I'd have to fix Brian Clough an ice bath, and I'd have a nice Radox bath, and I can remember it feeling so normal though. It was so strange. Like this is what all footballers do. But like, and then you just sit there. I'd get in my bath. He'd get in his bath, and he'd be like, "Are you caught in? How are your mum and dad?
Just
Are you
having a normal,
enjoying it, son?"
just having a normal
Yeah.
conversation while
Just having a
you're in the
normal
bath next to each other.
Yeah. And I'm just sat there going, "This is anything but normal." But I'm gonna have to engage with it. What's her name? Oh, she's called Sarah. Is she a good girl? Are you gonna get married? Just this was it. And you're just in there for half an hour, just having a chat, and he just like pile out. Thank you, son. That was my day to day. That was everyone's day to day. So like, it's funny speaking to people, especially like from a younger generation like yourself. I never came across him. Like, just it was all about the day to day and the atmosphere that I'm now left with, rather than we've all heard all the big stories. I looking back now, that the overarching thing for me is just how bonkers it was for those 2 years of being out of school and Brian Clough's your manager, and the bizarre madness of your day to day going about your business was quite a unique baptism of fire into the world of football.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's just so hard to, it's almost so hard to believe, and you just couldn't imagine a manager being the way he was, now. Can you imagine if Pep or Klopp were having baths with Salah, or it's just it's just nuts, isn't it? Just
one of the youth team,
Yeah.
they've done well. Spuggy says the same. Like, if Spuggy had a good game, because Cloughie loved Spuggy, if he had a good game, he'd be like, that'd be it. He wouldn't be training. Like, he'd take him for a little walk or round the pitch, and just have a nice little chat. It was lovely. Like, and like, for all there's loads of nasty stuff as well. Like, there's loads of horrible stuff that like doesn't really need speaking about. But there's some really dark times there for him, obviously, at the time of it in his life. But just things like, there's also lovely things that when we did the double, we won the league and then the cup, and then we got paraded around the pitch last game of the season. And I think it was we were playing Southampton or someone. Whenever I go on a podcast and I tell this story, I always get one of the lads text me, it was Portsmouth or whatever it was. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, we got paraded around the pitch, and he walked around with us, and everyone, like, the away fans and the whole of the City ground gave us a standing ovation. And I'll never forget, it was amazing. And then he made us, as we got round, he went and stood middle of the centre of the circle, and he made us walk back out with the cups and everything. And he had tears in his eyes. He was genuinely like welling up, giving us all these big hugs, all his youth team, all his young lads. And so it's things like that I'll never forget. Like, when you've got somebody like that ahead of you, like in charge of the club, like, you run through brick walls for that person, don't you? Like, because they're clearly showing such emotion. Like, this icon of football cares so much about the fact that we're all there and we've won these things for him. And those memories are quite beautiful.
I suppose even for players now with managers at a young age, almost that manager's like a father figure, and maybe Clough was like that to many of the youth team, and almost teaches you life lessons in a way as well, not just footballing lessons.
Well, he always used to say, didn't he? He was raising young men before he was raising footballers. That to link back to the bath conversations, or the going for a walk conversations, or any of that, or walking the dog and all that. He was digging into what kind of a person you were, whether you were a good kid, if you needed guidance, if you had a steady girlfriend, or your life was a bit tumultuous, or you're out all the time, or he wanted to know what was going on there as well, what kind of a person he had, and what kind of a person he needed to mold to create the sort of footballer he wanted, because he wanted good people first and foremost.
Let's touch on Reservoir Red Dogs, because you mentioned it a little bit there, and I mean, I can remember it back in, because it was really kind of big just before COVID happened.
Don't talk about Reservoir Red Dogs as being back in the day. That absolutely breaks me.
Well, it was a few years ago. Though. A few years ago. I can remember listening to it and thinking, it's a great podcast that, one day I might present a Forest podcast, and here we are. But honestly, there was some great guests on there, and I was just speaking to my dad the other day, actually, and he went, yeah, when you interview him, ask him about the Reservoir Red Dogs podcast and what that was like putting it together, because there was some good stories in there, from first team players to, I mean, I can even remember just like key episodes with I can remember Paul Hart, and then you had, I can remember, it's just, like Andy Reid was on there. I think Ryan Yates, when he was in the first team, or maybe just breaking into the first team, came on. There was some really good episodes. What was that like, putting it together and almost doing it with Fordy? And obviously, everyone loves Matt Ford, and he's a great bloke. And, it must have just been really nice almost doing a podcast with him and sharing the laughs and the stories.
Well, it was Johnny Owen that put it together. Johnny was mates with Fordy. Johnny had obviously done Miracles, and Fordy is an enormous Forest fan, so I think they came together via that, and you became like drinking buddies and mates. And I remember the meeting, actually. Johnny texted me and he was like, "Where are you?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm in." I was actually in. They were in town having a drink, and I was in the Star in Beeston, and I was having a pint. Shane Meadows was there, so he's one of our mates, our groups of friends. So I went to school with his wife, and we all know each other. So we've all been mates for years, and the kids have all grown up together and that. So you might imagine Fordy wanting to meet an ex-Forest player and Shane Meadows. So I went, right, we're coming over. So they came over and they pitched to me that night the idea for the podcast. And I was like, no, I don't want to do presenting. I've got no will or want to do it. I don't even really follow Forest that heavily. Like, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? I don't know the ins and outs of the club. But I've just got to do with like, no, you'll be great. Honestly, it's just about bouncing off. Fordy was like, I know everything about the club, absolutely everything. And he's like, it's just having an ex-pros that we get on. Just having an ex-pro there will be brilliant. It'll be loads of fun. And I reluctantly went, all right, I'll give it a try. So the first episode, I did all my research. I can't remember who it was, but I researched the living daylights out of them. And then went on. And it was nothing like that at all. We just had a complete laugh from start to finish. And Fordy was like, listen, it's not about knowing, like other podcasts, it's not about knowing like, oh, so-and-so, what do you think to so-and-so playing like false nine and dropping into this? Like, couldn't care less, not interested. Loads of other podcasts are doing that. Let's make it an absolute love story to Nottingham Forest. Which it became a really beautiful sort of. That's why I really enjoyed doing it, and I never studied for another episode since that first one. I just thought, right, I'm just going to rock up and just play it by ear and just have fun with it. And Fordy would do a very loose kind of. I've got 4 questions I really want to ask, but then from there it's just loose. So yeah, it was from that point. It was just an absolute joy, and like I say, it was a love story to Nottingham Forest by Nottingham Forest's most enthusiastic fan of all time, and a mate who's an ex-pro that had been there. And the thing for me was, I wasn't interested in getting back into football in any sense, or in any podcasting, or any broadcasting, like I said, or anything like that. Just it hadn't crossed my mind. But then since doing it, it really changed me quite profoundly in a way of really accepting basically the outpouring of love for such a bit part player, like sort of a cult figure at the club, the Britpop football, the guy that scored that goal and that goal, was just so joyful and so wonderful, and just I didn't know it was out there. And it was really genuinely, when I sat back and after about 8, 9, 10 episodes, I was just like, gosh, what a privilege to have bought. So the amount of people that come on and say, that night, mate, I'll never forget. That got me through this. That gave me so much joy. I met my wife that night, or did, just you punctuate these moments in people's lives playing for a football club. And it taught me a lesson on not to take those things lightly, because I'm the sort of person that wouldn't ever want to talk about that. I've never, before all of this, before Reservoir Red Dogs, I never used to talk. You can't shut me up now, but I never used to talk about it. I didn't go around saying, "Oh, I've done this," or I was always like, "God, who'd remember me? I played 35 games for Nottingham Forest, but like whenever I'm remembered by the Forest fans, it's so lovely. I'm just remembered in such a joyful way, and uh, with a smile on people's faces. They remember those great days of that great side, the Europe, me scoring against Man United, the Lyon game, the scissor kick against, they remember those few seasons, um, and it's just been a real joy, and it's been really nice to sort of accept that love from people, and go, oh, okay, all right, I did something once that meant some things to some people. That's a nice thing to take with you.
Yeah, no, it's lovely, and Forest are a special club like that, aren't they? And
Oh
you come
yeah.
back to the City Ground quite a bit, and you around Nottingham and things, and it's a special club. It's a special city. It's got that community feel. And I think that's what has kept the club going in a way. Would you agree? Through the dark moments, the past 10 years when Forest has been lingering near the bottom of the Championship to now, obviously in the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, people love coming to Nottingham because it's like it's a small city, like a big village, isn't it? Like everyone knows everybody. You can walk across the town centre in 8 minutes flat, even though that's growing and expanding out, thank goodness. So Nottingham within itself is a real community, but and having those clubs, having County there and Forest there and the county ground there, all in such close proximity to each other and such history at these grounds. It's such a unique, magical football club. Yeah, even daft things like the badge. Who else has still got their like sort of 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s badge? Just how beautiful that logo is, and I still get shivers looking at it. I'll see it, and sometimes I'll really take note of the logo. And go, what a logo that is! What a club! What a really magical club it is, and it is. And in regards to the idea of the moving grounds, I fully get it commercially. I fully get it, understand it commercially. In fact, I wouldn't hold it against the owners. I genuinely, like, if in order for the club, if what Everton are doing, like the Bramley Dock and everything, you look at that ground, you think, yeah, okay, I see it, I get it. But like the idea of not walking over Trent Bridge and seeing that site, there's something, and then therefore not being able to sing Mist Rolling In, and there's something that would break, something fundamental that would break at the heart. Yes, you take a step forward into the future, but do you know what I mean? The magic crumbles ever so slightly. The fact that Brian, the corridors are still there that Brian Clough walked through, and those great players that are still there. There's something I used to love it when I used to play and go to grounds that have rabid fans that had kind of outgrown the stadium. Like, so Plymouth was like that when I first went. I remember going, God, this is electric, but it was little. And I remember Luton being like that, and Wickham. I remember Wickham being like that as well. For some reason, I just loved going to these little grounds where the sort of fans were rabid and they'd outgrown it. And Forest feels like that, but in the Premier League, like Liverpool don't like coming to Anfield. You know what I mean? Liverpool don't like coming to the City Ground, and Arsenal don't like coming to the City Ground. They might scrap a result, but they don't like it. You see the players, they don't like it.
Yeah, it's just such a special ground. I think it's so special to so many people, and
Yeah,
and even just the 10 years that I've supported Forest, longer, really 12 years, and just going to the City Ground when I was younger, and I mean, look, it's nice to see the owners being ambitious and them wanting a big stadium, but I think fan power spoken. My favourite chant towards the end of the season was, and it was linked with Toten. They were singing "Toten's a shithole." It was brilliant.
mate. I could have walked to the City Ground if it was at Toten. I was a little bit, ooh, I quite fancy this.
It'd have been all right for you.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Forest. Almost, a little bit last season, but now next season, you still follow the club closely, and you try to catch as many games as you can. Nuno comes in, Steve Cooper goes, fans' favourite, and Forest just survived last season, but without the points deduction, we'd have probably been okay. I mean, how do you see us shaping up for next season? Because it is such a difficult league, the Premier League. It's so difficult for clubs just to stabilise themselves as well.
Well, I'm not going to endear myself to anybody. It's such a boring thing to say, but I genuinely do think that without the points deduction, a season like last season is a success. I think maintaining Premier League status without a little scrap down the bottom, which is worse for Forest fans because it's less exciting. But I think if there was a decade or 5 years of low to mid-table to achieving a seventh or an eighth, I think that would be an insane period in Nottingham Forest history. Listen, the Championship is tough. It's hard. Finally out of there, surviving in the Prem with the money getting thrown around, with the teams that are like smaller teams than Forest, but are now established in the Premier League, like got a real foot under the table, both feet under the table of being Premier League clubs, although it's never guaranteed. But if there's any Forest fans out there that are talking about pushing for any kind of upper, 10th, 9th, 8th, I just think it's silly. I do. I'm sorry. That's just my opinion. That would be wonderful. But the reality of it for me is, and I think Forest fans should be over the moon with it, another survival, another next year surviving, year after surviving, and crawling up as places, more money coming in, bigger crowds, more development, and slowly and build that. That to me is sensibly what should be happening. And I think that's what will happen. And that's the positive about what sounds negative. That's the positive for me. Survival and finishing 15th, 14th, 13th would be a great season for Forest.
Did you ever spend any time with Cooper before he went? Because I know that he spent a lot of time with the former players and he made a real connection. Did you ever meet the man?
Not personally. I went to a few of the Thursday clubs, but he was never there. Like the ex-players sort of Thursday clubs where Robbo would be there, and Woney, Stoney, and Daichi, and Ian Storey-Moore, Frank Clark. So we'd go and have a meal and have a few drinks. So I've been to about 8 of those, but he was never there. So he came to a few. But yeah, I never met him, unfortunately. But they all spoke in glowing terms of him. I don't know. It sort of felt right. I was a massive fan of keeping him in, and I honestly thought the Forest, the call for his neck, which there was a loud one for a long time, I thought was premature. And then I just thought, when it actually happened, I just thought, yeah, it's the right time. It's the right time. And I just think, I also think Leicester suits him as well. And like, good luck to him. Like he's been a great servant for Forest. He loved the club. The fans loved him. It's come, it's gone.
Yeah, and he'll always be remembered as a legend. And
exactly,
Nuno, yeah, exactly. And Nuno's here now, and a season with him, a pre-season under the players. You just don't know what will happen.
I've seen some of the pre-season footage. They look good.
Yeah, they look sharp.
Look confident. Look sharp. Yeah.
Is it difficult as a player, but also when you watch football? I often think this during pre-season. Is it hard to tell how well a team is doing? Because I can remember Forest had a really bad pre-season once, then went on to have a great, season, and then we've had a really good pre-season, and then we've lost the first 5 games. It is difficult, but there is encouraging signs there in a way.
Yeah, in pre-season, of course, every time you step over that line, you want to win a game. 100% you want to win the game, and you try your best to win the game. But you cannot pay any attention to pre-season results. They're as meaningless as it gets, really. A manager's job and coach's jobs to get minutes into the boys' legs and to start putting in some kind of shape a bit later on. And here's how we're going to play. And you start to build all that throughout pre-season. I was actually, during the footprints in the dressing room with Jay, we were chatting about, some of the lads were chatting about Ireland. And I remember going over to Ireland one pre-season, and we played Cobb Ramblers, and we played a couple of other teams. And mate, I've never been ran ragged as much in my life, because it was the end of their season. So the seasons overlap bizarrely. So we're coming off, remember, we're kind of still the drinking crew at Forest. So we're coming off a month on the beer, 3 weeks on the beer, going out there, playing some of these games, like a week or two's training previously, and then they've just played the last game of the season, so they're on fire. They're firing. I think they battered us like 7-0, and we got walloped all over the shop, and everyone's like, "What's happening to like? He's bought the worst players in the world," and it might be the preseason you were talking about. Then we went on to, I think it might have been the season where Stan was playing, where we finished third that next season. I could be wrong. But yeah, so yeah, I wouldn't pay any attention to any of that. But it's about getting legs. It's about getting minutes in the legs and getting the lads fit, getting them cooking, getting them used to each other, embedding new players, putting shapes into play, systems into play, and all that.
Yeah,
I used to hate it. God, I used to hate it.
Really?
The first season that I wasn't doing pre-season, loads of lads say that's the hardest. When everyone goes back to work and you're sat at home, everyone's like, that's the hardest. I was just like that. I couldn't wait for the morning. It was like, yes, I wish I could go and stand on Woollerton Park watching them all. I loved it. I used to hate it, mate. I couldn't stand running. My thing was, if there was a ball in front of me and I was on a pitch, I can run all day. I'm happy. I can do it. If I've got an incentive. I mean, nowadays, you're all strapped up and you've got monitors and you've got a goal. There's a reason for doing anything. We used to just have Archie Gemmell go and run around that tree. Why? You just run around that tree, get back, run it, go again. Now go around that one over there. Right, go again backwards. Like what? Why? I know it's to get fit, but like this is just, you're just beasting me. Like what's the point here? I couldn't get my head around it. And do you know what? I remember when I was in the band, when we were recording our first album, the producers, Leia, used to like, right, let's take a break. Let's just go for a walk. And I was exactly the same. Unless we were going to a pub, I was like, why are we walking? Where are we going?
There's no end goal.
Yeah, there's no. We're just gonna walk. Like, what are we doing? So yeah, I don't know what that is. That's my bad, but that's on me. But yeah, I couldn't get my head round pre-seasons, and therefore I was always a slow starter.
You know, it's pre-season now for the near enough the end of pre-season for most clubs, but you've been keeping yourself busy doing some coaching, haven't you? We were chatting about that just before we kind of recorded this, and on Sunday at the Footprints game, and just suppose a bit of a chance to plug what you're doing and how people can get involved.
Oh, nice one, mate. Yeah, I mean, I've got a community interest company. I've got a foundation, a CIC, and I get grants and donations, and because I live in Long Eaton, so Long Eaton's a mad little place, as I'm sure you know. It's like you go down one street, there's like £1 million houses. You go down that street, it's in the worst degradation. It's like the worst zone in the UK. Just deprivation. It's just so it's a bizarre little area. So we provide multi-sports camps, and we provide all kinds of different bits and bobs and food for kids that don't have access to all this stuff. So I do that, and my daughter's of an age now where she comes home from school or whatever, that she's sort of off on her own doing her stuff. So I was wondering what I fancied doing around all the other bits that I'm trying to grow, like my podcasts and everything. And I thought, I really like the idea of like one-to-one coaching, not coaching teams or not coaching, because I do coach my daughter's side, but like not like that, but really digging into like good young footballers and making sure that their techniques are all correct and they're doing the right things and their training attitudes are good. And you'd be surprised how many sort of habits and techniques you have to break down. So even at kids that are like coming to me that are at Notts County's academy, and they're coming out and they wanted to do like an hour a bit extra with an ex-pro, and I'm having to break down how they're striking with their left foot because it's not mirroring their right, and all kinds of stuff. So the minutiae is what I'm really interested in young, hungry footballers, boys and girls. And I've been doing them one-to-one. I do one to twos as well, so I'll do a pair. But beyond that, ages 8 to 16 as well, because there are other coaches that can do all the babysitting and all that kind of stuff, and that's not what I want to do. What I want to do is really get under the bonnet of these young footballers, make sure that to run the engine analogy that I'm now stuck in, to make sure that they're purring correctly and the pistons are firing and everything's that everything's running smoothly, and that they're moving correctly, striking correctly, and all that, and then build upon that from that point. So, and you know what? It's been an absolute joy. I've loved every second of it, and I'm rammed, which is great. It's started it 4 or 5 weeks ago. It's gone crazy, which has been lovely.
Yeah.
I'm like doing 4 sessions most nights. 4 sessions on a Saturday morning. I've just opened my Tuesday mornings for the summer holidays, and I do it all on Long Lane on Attenborough Park, which is a lovely little park with a lovely little bistro there, Park Bistro, which is really nice. So yeah, it's just nice little surroundings, 1-to-1. Set up a goal, balls, cones, and off we go. We dig into it. So it's been great fun. We've got loads of lovely kids, loads of really good talent knocking about. So it's been a privilege.
No, good stuff. You never know. I was going to say, is there an age limit on it? I might be signing up before the next footprints game, getting some practice in.
I think you're beyond it, mate, if I'm honest.
I was going to say, can you tell me how to stop giving away penalties and things? Yeah.
We need a bit more patience as a defender. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah, honestly, Jason Lee puts me left back, and then I go on the pitch. I make this brilliant kind of tackle and put the ball out, and give him a big thumbs up, and then literally about 40 seconds later, I can't remember who it was, one of the players on the other team, sprinting towards me. Everyone runs out of the way. He's coming at me. I'm thinking, stick the leg out. And the end, yeah. There you go.
Oh gosh. There was a few lads on the bench going, was that a foul? Was that a Jay? Jay was like, yeah, that was about 7 fouls. That couldn't have been more than a foul. It was the biggest foul.
It was a clear penalty. Although, I don't know, VAR probably would have overruled it.
Well, you just don't know, do you?
There we go. Right. I think that does us nicely. Paul, thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. And can I just say, mate, I'm a real fan as well. I'm loving everything that you're doing. I think you're a credit to the club and to the fan base, and you're a breath of fresh air in that whole world. And I'm a fan. And every time you come up on Instagram, you're always really, really, really watchable. I always make sure I watch everything. So yeah, keep going, man. You're doing really well.
Thanks very much. I appreciate that.
My
pleasure. I'll chuck you that 20 quid after for saying. Good stuff. Hope to see you back on. We might get you back on next season when Forest in the Champions League final, and then you can. Paul McGregor there speaking with his Brian Clough stories. Excellent guest. If you did enjoy that episode, then give us a like and share it across socials. Now, ending today's podcast on a bit of a sadder note. Many of you will be aware, we've mentioned him lots. Barry Woodfield Spencer died a few months ago now, and we mentioned it on the podcast. And he's somebody that had a huge part of my Forest life, and he was interviewed numerous times on Matchday with Max, and we know he absolutely loved the podcast as well. He was a big fan of Garibaldi Red right from when it began, and especially when I came in as well, and he listened to the episodes, and he was a huge fan of everything we did. Barry's funeral was yesterday, and I had the real honour of speaking. His family asked me to speak, and I said a few words. I think what I will say, people just say sometimes that football is just a game. And I think many of us know that isn't the case. And for Barry's family, that certainly isn't the case. It was through my love of Forest and getting to know him and interviewing him. He just shared words of wisdom, and he was excellent, on videos, and people loved him. People loved the old bloke he was nicknamed. And honestly, he became a bit of an internet sensation, and as the new season starts, and I look around the main stand, Barry won't be there. And it's really difficult to think about that. But he will be here in spirit with us for Forest next season. And, I know that everyone listening to Garibaldi Red, everyone associated with the podcast, are sending their love and condolences to the family. Obviously, an incredibly difficult time. What we've done is we've put a little bit of a tribute together for Barry with some of his words of wisdom and interviews with me in the past. So we're going to end today's podcast with a tribute to Barry Woodfield Spencer. Barry, rest in peace. We've beat Man United.
Deal, Max, because my horse is gone.
Barry, First home game of the Premier League season after 23 years. Forest win 1-0.
Oh my God. It's gone beyond expectations today. I thought after the tonking we got last week, and they keep it tight. 23 years, I know, but we do like being on the chips.
Yeah. And you still think Forest have got enough about them to stay up, and this will give the players confidence?
Of course they have. They're starting to get together now. They're putting some rubbish performances on, but you can see little bits. And today you could see everybody was having a go. I got a funny feeling today. I was telling lad, I says, I think we're going to struggle a bit, and we did do. But
Sean Dyche masterclass, I thought, tactically.
I was saying to Gary, I says he was brilliant. You know, after the first 10 minutes when they scored, right, let's start time wasting. Well, he always does, don't he? He won't sit back on one goal or two goals, he just keeps going.
Yeah.
I thought in the first half, we were a bit leggy. And also, the misses, the chances we had, I thought, oh God, not one of them games, surely. I was saying to Gary earlier on, you know, as soon as he started putting defenders on, I said, that's it. I said, they're going to sit back and we're going to either lose or they're going to get a goal. Yeah. No need for it. Going ultra defensive like that. Very, very disappointed. It is a community. It's a family now, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, it really is.
It is.
I'm loving it.
I am too. Come on, you
I
Reds.
said it last time. I'm loving every second.
So many VAR moments as well.
Don't get me on that one. Please don't get me on that.